Yo, what's going on, guys? And today, a report coming from the Philadelphia Inquirer saying that the 76ers are one of the teams that the Atlanta Hawks have done their due diligence, as well as the Golden State Warriors are one of the teams that have called the Sixers. Specifically, the Warriors have been canvassing the league. Every stone is not being left unturned as they try to find a complementary star to Steph Curry. Now, Atlanta coming in here follows up the rumor we heard yesterday that they're interested in Brandon Ingram as a rental player, as Jalen Johnson now being out for the season with the torn labrum. This report specifically says, as we get into today's video, I want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Which team do you think, if it were to happen right here, we're not saying this is going to happen, we're just speculating that if this deal were to happen, what would it look like? Why would they do it? And how would we go about valuing Paul George, who's arguably having the worst season of his career, or the worst one since his rookie year? Now, to me, when we look at this situation, I have my handy dandy phone in my hand, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But as of right now, the Philadelphia 76ers season has been a failure. Is it their fault? No, health hasn't helped, hasn't contributed to the situation. And we know that the Warriors, if we're going to start with the Warriors, we're getting to the Hawks in a second, but the Warriors try to acquire Paul George over the summer in a sign and trade. And then obviously the Sixers ended up winning that one outright. However, as we approach Thursday's deadline, the Philadelphia Inquirer writes that Paul George is someone that you need to keep an eye on. This is coming from Kieth, Pompey. And are they already throwing the towel in on the 5-year, $211 million acquisition that they brought in this offseason? He hasn't been a fit. He's also a step slower and more of a forward than a wing that he used to be. And to me, that's what makes this so much more interesting, is if they are ready to throw in the towel. And in my opinion, Daryl Morey, if he's going to trade Paul George, he's like, I kind of want to do over this summer and try to build again. So if that were to be the case, let's go ahead and go to the handy dandy Fanspo trade machine, which right here would allow us to look at what the deals are. Personally, I do think Atlanta gives you a very interesting deal, as I think they would rather trade him to the Warriors because the Warriors are allegedly desperate. But Atlanta, there's multiple ways you can go about this. That's 4 years. You'd assume the deal would have Clint Capella, and somebody's going to be like, well, Clint Capella doesn't make sense. He's an expiring contract. That's why it makes sense. Obviously, they have Joel Embiid. You'd assume maybe they throw in Andre Drummond over here so they don't have a hole at the backup center behind Onyeka. But outside of that, Bogdanovich, Larry Nance are all guys that could easily go in this deal that could become flippable again, or even a DeAndre Hunter's allegedly being shopped. In my opinion, no young guys would be included, and we're already at 50 million right there. So it makes you wonder that we know they're shopping Bogdan. That's a fact. And my assumption is they really like DeAndre Hunter, and DeAndre Hunter's kind of figured it out this season, especially as a as a second unit guy running as the sixth man. And this deal right here, honestly, it's not too crazy. You could figure out the picks that would be needed to make this go down. But in my eyes, you look at Bogdanovich. Yeah, it says 3-year deal, but the third year on that deal is a team option, so you can decline that. So what that means, he becomes a expiring contract basically next year. Clint expiring, Larry expiring. Wow. Paul George's contract's off the books, and now the Hawks have themselves Paul George and Andre Drummond, and you would assume Paul George, Trae Young, Onyeka Okongwu, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Risache, and then you'd have Jalen Johnson back in the fold. And if you're really down the road worried about money, like, this is not that money wise, not too worrying of a deal. I think it's a lot more plausible than the average person would think. Now, let's go over to the Golden State Warriors and talk about what they could do. And this is where it becomes hard because if I'm the Warriors, I don't want to trade Andrew Wiggins. I would love to have Paul George and Andrew Wiggins together. And to me, if you're bringing Paul George, if you're trying to keep everybody else that's good on your team, then I'd have to assume that you would first look, because you're already at $33 million right here with Kyle Anderson, Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, and Gary Payton II. Do you think they would throw in the towel on not Dennis Schroeder, because they can't trade Dennis Schroeder, but Buddy Hield or a Brandon Podojemski? Because right now, if we do the deal, they aren't able to do it, as technically, they have to remove about $15 million from this, which if they were to do something along this lines, it would have to include, again, this I think would be a multi-team deal if they had to go this deep, because already if you add Buddy Hield, you're still $6.8 million short. So we go over here, B-Pod is still not going to get the deal done. And you see how many players are already being traded, so you would need some minimum contracts to come back on your way to make up for everything you're losing. Because you would literally, if you wanted to keep your whole squad and take back the minimum of contracts, there you go. You're under the allowable income by $13 million, and you're actually having a cap difference of $730,000. Technically, the Sixers take on money, but what you could argue is because you are trading so much, you need players to allow you to fuel the roster. You could argue that these are all minimum contracts, and minimum contracts don't affect the salary cap, so when they're aggregated in a trade, they actually won't count against the cap, and you can do something like that. I'm actually not kidding. This is actually a plausible trade. You can send all those guys with Paul George, and the Warriors could send. Obviously, you would probably want to make this a bigger deal, but to just have you guys understand the money wise of it all, that deal works. And I know it says there's an $8 million difference. It's actually not the money difference, because all the contracts that say minimum do not affect the cap and minimum contracts. So you right now have, as you would be trading 3, 6, 8 players for 4 players. So you would have to convert some two-way contracts or sign some guys in free agency. You'd assume that they would convert Quinn Post, Pat Spencer, Prod Jackson Rowe at this point. But yeah, something along those lines, right? Pretty crazy when you think about it. And yeah, if you guys made it to the end of the video, let me hear your thoughts down below. Oops, wrong little thing. Wrong one again, guys. We're over here striking out. But which one do you like better? I think the more realistic. Obviously, guys, we didn't do the actual trade that would be done. That's the trade that I would fight tooth and nail for if I was the Warriors. Now, because you still have an incredible core, and in my opinion, if the idea is to have this incredible core, then I would just say F it and trade everything. I actually don't think that trade's realistic. I think the most realistic trade is probably Andrew Wiggins. Yep. There you go. Oh, wait. Maybe you throw in Gershon and who else? Reggie or Eric Gordon, maybe. Because they kind of implied that Eric would go. Let's just do this. This is probably the most realistic trade. Now, picks, compensation-wise, you can figure it out, but this allows the Sixers to get cap flexibility, while the Warriors also don't lose all their freaking depth. Anybody else that I think who could bet that was not English that could get tossed into this is see, I could maybe see like an Adam Bona thrown in this just because the Warriors lose older big men or an Andre Drummond, but I would not be surprised if the Warriors go like we rather have Adam Bona in this case because he's on a cheap deal and he played at UCLA and he fits what they like. So, yeah.